What's going on, guys? SeeJay here, and I thought today would be a fun video to make, to do like a big look back over the course of the 2023 and the initial launch of Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth, and what we kind of got throughout the year. And maybe I'm gonna make another video tomorrow, or not maybe, I'm gonna make another video tomorrow, kind of looking at like what I would like to see going into 2024, and sort of like my wish list of things that this game could potentially look at adding. We already know multi-squad PvP is in the works, so that's going to be exciting new content, but there's plenty of other things that I have ideas, because right now in the game, there's a lot of good stuff, but there's also like not a lot, right? You log in, you do your dailies, you do some rework of your characters, you know, you have fun in the game. So I wanted to look back and kind of just discuss some of the things that have happened over the course of the year, and I think it'd be kind of fun just to see like what this game has done and what it's added. So you'll see I have the Heroes of Middle-earth EA main page, which lists all of their patch notes. Plenty of other places to get this. I kind of put together like a little bit of like a cheat sheet, you know, just to kind of like talk through what happened month over month. And then I have a bunch of tabs open. I was gonna make this like a little bit more of like a very fun edited video, but it's the holidays. It's just like kind of tough to really go all in. So this video I think could just be fun, right? Just something to like look back at and see like, man, this game came out in May. It's now New Year's Eve and we're heading into 2024. What else are they going to do to this game, right? So if we kind of just like go in chronological order, the game officially launched in May, right? May 10th. I think it was April 26th, but that was like a soft launch. And just speaking from a global launch perspective, where like, you know, me who lives in the US had access to the game. Now, I didn't play this game on launch. I actually didn't start playing this game, and I've mentioned this in a couple of my videos. I believe it was in August. And if I look at the character reveal list, I'm pretty sure I started playing when Faramir, Boromir, and Denethor came out. They were like the announced characters for the next marquee event. So it was like end of August. So I missed like the first 3 months of this game, and then I've been playing it every day for the last 4 months. And I just started getting into the contents out of it over the last, you know, week or so. But if we're looking at sort of like just the timeline here, just to kind of go through and just have something to like look back at again, maybe like this time next year, and see how much more they did or didn't add to the game as we progress through the lifespan of Heroes of Middle-earth. They had their official announcement, and along with it came Lord Elrond, so that was pretty exciting. And they already had like a legendary kind of planned on day one release of the game, or fairly early on. I didn't play on day one, so I'm not sure exactly the date and, you know, etc. for Lord Elrond, but they did announce them relatively early, along with the raid, right? The Mines of Moria raid. So those are things that were announced pretty early on, and I think the raid probably would have made sense to come out when the game was launched, but it didn't. So if we look at the global launch, there was 46 characters on release, and at the end of 2023 we currently have 68. We've gotten 22 new characters, 2 legendaries, and 20 marquee characters. And if we're looking through the list, we can see that the first month, which would have put us back in June of 2023, was Rivendell month, and that's when we got the announcement of course, Lord Elrond being in the game and his 2 buddies in the power trio here, Eladin and Arwen, right? I love their artwork too. Some of these graphics are just absolutely amazing. But you can see that they announced these characters, and they were kind of like your June, you know, your June go-to, right? And if you were newer, if you just started playing the game, you know, this was going to be a cost sink. Like there was just no way the first go around, just like Thorin. Maybe Thorin a little bit more of an opportunity if you just happen to be a goblin lover and you sort of put some effort into those characters early on and just happen to have them built out. So when Thorin was announced, you were like, man, I'm ahead of the curve. But this was like the game just came out. Nobody really had 5-star elves, I would assume. So unless you were a whale, you probably weren't really getting Elrond on launch. And then the next month, or before we kind of jump into July's Fellowship month, which was pretty cool because they brought Legolas and Gimli, which are like pretty well-known characters in the game. If you've ever like watched the movies and such, this is around the timeline when there was the massive star change to the game, in which for the first like month or two of the game, and from watching videos that have been created by other content creators before I even played, it was all about the gear and the stars were not as important, because if you were a 1-star to a 7-star character, it was a difference of like a 1 to a 2x. So you got value, but it wasn't as scaled as it is today, which now if you go from 1-star to 7-star, it's 4x the value. So you're doubling what it was from when it was originally launched in the game, right? So that was a huge change. And I would imagine it probably ticked a lot of people off. Like if I was playing the game and I was grinding and you had limited resources because you didn't have the raids yet and you didn't have access to some of like the further alongside adventures to get your gold, etc., etc., and you invested all of your resources into getting the gear tier, and then a month or two later they said, oh, you know what, gear is important, but now the stars are even more important, and you had to completely flip-flop your, you know, your kind of philosophy of how you're grinding the game, that would have been frustrating. I don't know if that would have stopped me playing the game because I truly enjoy it, but I definitely am glad that when I started playing in August, like those changes have already been made. So I came into the game with the star changes already sort of like normal and not hearing how much people were pretty pissed off about it. So that was something that kind of happened, like it was around the Arwen Eladin heading into the July, I believe, in that time window, like end of June-ish. So we got that big change. That was definitely like a huge patch change for this game. And then July, we got Fellowship Month, right? So again, kind of diving in, we got Gimli and Legolas added to the game. They were the marquee event characters. No legendary to follow with them, just you know, the marquee itself. And then we officially got the Mines of Moria raid on July 26th, which also came with, of course, our buddy Gandalf the Grey, which is, you know, just the farm that you do. And I'm still farming him myself to try and finally unlock him. Of course, with the glyphs being added to the game here later along 2023, it certainly has helped increase a lot of scores for a lot of guilds to be able to get a little bit more maybe on your personal track, and of course just in the guild reward track itself. But we did see the raid officially launched, and within the raid you got the 4 chapters, and they released each chapter over a course of 4 months. So we just got the 4th chapter obviously back in October, but we had chapter 1, which was They Are Coming, and that is going to be your, you know, your wave version, Doom, which was back in August, and that's your single target big, you know, ogre dude. Chapter 3 we got in September, which is another wave, and then chapter 4 is your big, you know, fire turned shadow turned to normal form boss. So pretty cool. I think, again, I mean, the game came out technically in May, and they did release the raids in July. So I hear a lot of people complaining that this should have came out on launch, and although I do agree that the raids on launch would have been great, I don't really think that if a game came out on May 10th and you added raids less than 2 months later, even if it was only 1 chapter, so I mean it's only 1 day worth of content per week, so maybe they could have released the raid in full instead of releasing it over a course of 4 months. So you know, you could look at it both ways, but I would say because of the lack of content in the game in general, the raid definitely added value to the game and gave you more reasons to log in. And so I can see the non-appeal of not having the raids on release. Again, I played in August, so we already had chapter 1, I believe, and maybe even had chapter 2, which of course, since I just started playing, I wasn't even level 30 yet. I didn't have really any teams. I really didn't even start raiding until probably September, if I recall, in which, you know, at that point we had 2 or even 3 chapters. So like I didn't really have that doom and gloom feel of, man, there's just not anything to do in the game. Whereas if you played on day 1, you know, you can probably certainly see it. Like I played Warcraft Rumble when that launched a couple months ago, and I was pretty addicted. I thought it was a fun game, you know, something different, something to play on my phone. And even Warcraft Rumble, which has, I think, relatively decent amount of content to play, at least like, you know, kind of sink your time into a little bit, because there's not that whole feature of auto battling that does take you sort of like out of the game, where you kind of just log in, auto battle everything, log out. You have to play the game and actually beat the content. And there is PvP, which is cool, and like real one-on-one true PvP. The problem with that game is they also don't have the raids out, right? So like the Molten Core raid is something that will be a launch, but it's not going to be launched for some time. And so you're already seeing people in the same boat as like this game, where a lot of hype, a lot of fun, you kind of did everything, and now you're waiting for the raids, which is probably what happened here. But not to go on that tangent. So the raids came out in July, end of July, and then we had Haradrim month, which awesome, right? Like Haradrim is a great squad. So you had the release of Bekaloo and Tabeb, and so they came to the game as a couple marquee characters, which was for August of 2023. So I just missed this because I definitely do not remember Haradrim being on my marquee event list, which I kind of wish some of the, like, I know we got Arwen and Eladin marquee back, which was great because that was like a free 100 shards for my account, like because I already unlocked Arwen and Eladin on the nodes and then was farming them, and then the marquee event came back and it was like, man, I just got 100 free shards. Like, this is amazing. I would love for that to happen again with like Haradrim, because although Beklu is pretty meaningless because Beklu is already 7-star on my account, Tebeb 100 shards on a character that is the worst farm in the game in the challenge shop would be amazing to get 100 free shards, right, for just doing the marquee event over. Or like Gimli and Legolas, 100 on those characters. Like pretty much all the characters I missed. Will they bring all the marquee characters back at some point? Maybe, but so far we've only seen Arwen and Eladin as like the return characters in the game. So anyway, so that would be sort of like the August sort of big kind of like, what do they add to the game scenario, right? Then then we had Gondor month. So Gondor month was going to bring you Faramir, Boromir, and Denethor, and I remember them. They were, I think, the first one to showed up for my marquee runs. Wasn't really excited about the Gondor. I'm not like a huge Gondor fan, so I mean, of course, I did the marquee event to unlock the characters, but I had really no interest in like investing into these characters. But yeah, that was like September's month. I think it was kind of like, in my opinion, one of the worser months in terms of like exciting characters added to the game. And then we had the big announcement of sort of like, hey, the game's been out for 3 months. This is what we kind of want to do over the next 3 months as we kind of get into, you know, Q4 of 2023. And a lot of good things were announced, right? We had, what have we done so far? And we kind of talked about that a little bit here over the last, you know, few minutes. And what do we want to do? And what they want to do is some really good things, right? Like, just to kind of keep it high level, the big things that they announced was multi-squad PvP, right? And they announced the Glyph system. So we're still waiting on multi-squad PvP. Not really sure when we're going to see that. I'm hoping it's like early 2024, since this is something they kind of talked about back in August of 2023, so 4 months ago now. But we did get the Glyphs, and the Glyphs was a huge update to the game because it did add another layer of personalization to your characters and how you want to play. Like, there's of course going to be your meta builds. Like right now, your Last Stand Bloodlust is just really strong. They'll probably nerf those, and that's fine because that'll allow the other glyphs to kind of shine a little bit, and that way not everyone is building the exact same comps. And we're speaking from like a raid perspective. Obviously for PvP, there's better ways to kind of build your teams, but I'm not the type that is super min-maxing every content I do in the game and changing my glyphs and paying the gold and blah blah blah. It's not a big, you know, gold sink, but I'm just not going to keep changing them. If they ever create like a quality of life feature that allows you to do like quick swaps, that'd be amazing. Like having 2 or 3 builds for one character, like again, like a 2024 wish list quality of life feature. But they did announce these 2 big things, right? So glyphs and multi-squad PvP. I think they need a lot more on the kind of wish list, but we'll take it, right? We'll take anything they add to this game to give us a little bit more to do every day. Then we look into a little bit further ahead. Now we're heading into October of 23, so we're getting a little bit closer to the end of the year. And it was Lords of Moria's month, which is Lord Balin, which you guys know I love that character. And then Rumil and Orifin were added. Great team. You got the Dwarf Elf. Both those tribes, factions, clans, whatever you want to call them, are just top notch in this game. Elves are certainly probably the strongest tribe in the entire game, and dwarves are kind of coming right behind them now that you get the Thorns Company, etc. So those are really cool characters added, and I'm really excited that these ones should be coming around in a few weeks as free-to-play farmable. And then following that, we had the return of Lord Elrond, which is one of the characters I got to 5-star when he made the return for his appearance. And of course, as I mentioned, Eladin and Arwen also made their marquee return. So figured I'd call this one out because, you know, so we saw that Lord Elrond came out in like June, and then he made a return in October. So it was roughly 4 months later. So if they kind of keep that similar trend, maybe we'll see Elrond again in February or March. And then maybe we'll see Thorin in like April, May, right? So time will tell because we've only had 2 legendaries. So we'll see how sort of their cadence looks. But as we get more and more legendaries in the game, it'll be exciting because they should have a lot more consistent like legendary marquee events that are like always kind of going on to keep you sort of always trying to grind for that like next tribe to get your next legendary. Whereas like right now we only have 2. So it's like every couple months something shows up. But in like a year or 2, you might have 6 or 7 legendaries. So there's always like one rotating every single month to give you someone to kind of look forward to. And then November was Dark Sorcery month. So this was exciting because Black Beast felt like a legendary, and the whole kit was really, really awesome, and a character that I really am looking forward to building out once they reveal the rest of the Dol Guldur, right? We haven't had many shadow characters added to this game, and I think in 2024 they're really going to have to put some effort into like adding shadow characters, because there's just not enough of them that are fun to farm. I mean, for me, really, like, I'm only spending my shadow crystals at this point on like Haradrim. Like, there's just no one else to really farm in the game from the shadow side. And this trio is like a really cool synergy with like the whole binding concept and such, and like the lifesteal package and whatnot. So I am excited about this team and this trio when they are free to play farmable, but I would like to see like the other two sort of show up, and maybe like this team could have like a really good synergy with like a legendary character to follow. So we'll see, like a Ring Wraith or something, right? Like, there's a lot they could do with this group, because it's a really cool like Nazgul, like, you know, one of my favorites in like the Lord of the Rings Middle Earth sort of you know, background of the storytelling. So definitely was excited when they announced this. We'll see what they add to kind of continue with this squad. And then that leads into Glyphs. So Glyphs were officially launched at the beginning of December, I believe. Maybe it was late November, but I think it was beginning of December. And lots of good stuff, right? Like, this was a major overhaul to the UI in the game to kind of fit it. I think they did a nice job with the way the game looks now. I like the feel of it. I like the star color change from like that blue to the gold. I think it's great. I mean, it's still buggy a little bit, you know, don't get me wrong. It's like they still got some work to do, but the Glyphs was an absolute game changer. Huge update to the game. And I think they did a nice job too of like where they added them on the tracks. Like, if you really want to farm them, they're not terrible. Like, they could have definitely put them on some really shitty nodes, but they did add them to some nodes where they are farmable on characters. They are farmable on gear resources that you need. The only thing they did kind of like ninja nerf that was a little frustrating is on some of the nodes where you're farming, like, especially like for me with Rivendell, and I'm farming, you know, I'll show it here, for example. I think I still have the game open. So like, if I come into the game and I'm looking for like Arwen, and I want to farm some of the gear nodes, this is kind of like a pseudo nerf that they didn't really announce, which is a little frustrating. So if I went to like the candles, you'll see now that the candles, this guy here, 2-8, you're getting 2. All the other ones, because they added the glyph to the node, you now only get 1. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really is, because now I only really have 1 node that I'm like truly interested in farming. So it sets you back a little bit when you're trying to get your resources in this game. But, you know, they probably should have made a note of that, and they didn't. Like, that was something that they just kind of did and didn't really talk about. But anyways, Glyphs, huge change to the game. And then as we're kind of getting more into the present here, you had the second legendary announcement, which was Thorin and his buddies Bilbo and Bomber. Great team, and somebody that I didn't get the first time around, but hopeful that I can get him here in a couple months when he makes his great return. I think Thorin is just as good as Lord Elrond. He's definitely going to be a legendary that everyone's going to want to go after. It's just, Goblins was tough, right? Like, not a lot of people built that squad out. And then just kind of showcasing again like the Thorin and his kit, which we know he's just an absolute beast with a lot of his synergies with all of his kind of passes built in. And then you had Uders, which was kind of like a random ad, right? It's a warg. It's like a new tribe to the game. Works really well with the goblins. Kind of added because it's somebody that you could kind of pay to win your way to getting a 5-star character, which is 1 less goblin that you would have needed to unlock Thorin, because it sort of, you know, counts towards that squad that you need the 5 in order to be able to even access the Thorin marquee event or legendary event. So he was added. And then kind of the last thing that they talked about before going on holidays was kind of like the journey behind, as a lot of people have called. They made the announcement, which was similar to the one we looked at for the August call out and what was coming, which was going to be your Glyphs and your multi-squad PvP, which we saw Glyphs eventually come to the game here before everyone went on like holiday break. But the journey ahead for 2023 in December, which was announced just a few weeks ago, they talk about Glyphs again, which was already added. So that's like, okay, that's, we know, right? It's in the game. So you're telling me something I don't really need anything from you guys, right? Like, this isn't new content. We have this in the game. They talked about Thorin, the legendary, which again, we already knew about, and then kind of talked about the holidays. So it's like, okay, so this is like our kind of quarterly, like what to expect as we head into 2024. And you're telling us nothing. Like, we already have this. So what's 2024's game plan? So little bit disappointing to kind of get this update from the team before the holidays, but that's where I'm gonna again make a video tomorrow and discuss the 2024 wish list and things that I hope that they kind of add to the game from like quality of life perspective and like features and content that might just add a little bit more value to the game to get you into it more frequently and in the game for longer periods of time. Because again, right now when I'm doing the raids, like that takes up a little bit of time, 4 days a week, because every day for a chapter. But if it's like non-raid day, like today, like I already did my dailies for my 10 minutes. And now it's like, okay, well at 11 a.m. on my time, I can go back in to do like, the supply refresh shop, buy a few things, whatever. And then I like nothing again for 4 hours, right? So I'm just like logging in for 5 minutes a couple times a day, which I don't want a game that I'm going to be like locked in and touching on my phone for 6 hours a day, but it would be nice to have something to do besides just a few minutes a day within the game. But anyways, I thought it'd be fun to make a video kind of looking back at like, okay, the game came out in May, we're 7 months later, we're heading into 2024. What have they added? What have they done? The big thing that they've really done in this game is added 22 new characters. They added the raid and they added 22 of the characters, 2 of them were legendary. So few big things added to the game, but and the glyphs, of course, the glyphs, but probably the raid and the glyphs, right? Those are like the 2 big content updates that they've released in 2023 over the course of the 7-8 months of the game being launched. So I hope you like this video. I think it was kind of fun to look back and see everything that has happened in sort of like the chronological order and how things have progressed, and kind of being able to see like how we can expect things to happen maybe next year. It seems like we got 2 big updates this year with the raids and the glyphs, so maybe next year we'll get like 3 or 4, like quarterly, get some big content drops, but time will tell. Anyways, if you guys like this kind of content, let me know. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.